Naghuntahan lang.
Tuloy-tuloy. We're live. Hello, Comics people. Ako si Mel Casipit. And kasama ko ngayon si Mitzi Bajet, si Ardie Aquino, si Francis Martelino, and our special guest, si Sir Budjette ng Trese Comics. Hello, sir. Thank you for accommodating Indie Comics podcast.
Hello. Hello, guys. Hello, Indie Comics people.
Yeah, IK Peeps.
IK Peeps po talaga.
Hello, IK Peeps.
Ayan. So, Sir Budjette, kamusta naman po dyan sa Denmark ngayon?
Okay naman. Thankfully, I'm still working from home.
I feel you.
Pero yun, nag-ease up na rin yung lockdown dito in terms of my kid is back in school, and at least you can now travel in and out of the country in some countries. So, but yes, as much as, and yung na-discover namin, ay kaya pala matapos yung trabaho kahit nasa bahay ka.
Yeah.
Medyo mahirap lang is, of course, since I work in the ad agency over here, so we have to do shoots of TV commercials, right? So everything is done through live stream.
Ang
Sir
hirap
Budjette
naman nun.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep,
Sir Budjette, yung yung pag-work nyo dyan sa Denmark, same din ang process nung kay Ian Santa Maria na sa LinkedIn din nag-apply?
I went through yes and no. I mean, it's I found the job through LinkedIn, and eventually you have to submit on what do you call this? You have to submit on Lego's actual job site.
So may call sila, open call.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to what do you call this? If you go to lego.com/jobs or follow Lego on LinkedIn, they refresh that regularly kung if there are any job openings. So that's how I found that. So yeah, as Ian got in on his first interview, I got rejected twice before and then I tried out for the third time, and that's when I was approved.
Oh, third time's the charm.
Oo nga. Parang pala yan, Sir Budjette, parang yung Trese din nung pinipis nyo. Hindi rin kaagad na approved.
Yes. Buti hindi umabot ng 13 times.
Na. Huwag naman. I think the show, I need to check with our producers. I know they pitched. Wala akong nalaban sa pag-pitch. They pitched that a lot of times. They've been pitching the show for 7, 8 years.
Wow. Oh my God.
Before they found Netflix or before Netflix said that they were willing to produce anime from other countries.
Ay, grabe.
Yeah, ang daming... But let me check. Baka nga tama ka, Ardie. Baka nga 13th.
Sige.
Pang 13th try, nakapasok ang Trese.
Sir Budjette, yung Trese, nagsimula siya as Indie Comics din dati, di ba?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
2005 ba yun?
Yep. 2005, we just photocopied the first issue of Trese. We made 30 copies because I wasn't sure if it was going to sell or not. But I guess part of the backstory there is we did publish other comics. I mean, we self-published. I don't know if any of you guys, does anyone have a copy of Komiks 101, which came out in 1994?
Wala.
Talo kayo ni Gabby. May kopya na noon.
Pero baka meron. Tingnan natin. Minsan may mga sale books akong nabibili. Comics 101. Yung Alamat Comics ba, sir? Yun ba yun? Yung Alamat?
Or Alamat.
Si Mel lang meron.
Ano yun?
Si Mel lang ang meron nun. Sakali.
Kasi nung sa UP pa, sa bahay ng alumni, doon may mga binebentang mga lumang comics doon Alamat Comics. So baka may nabili ako.
I think si Jerry pa nagbebenta nun. But yun, so before Trese, we shelled out money to print Komiks 101, and then Alamat 101 came out, and then of course Batch 72 came out.
Yun.
And it was fun doing it, pero nalugi kami dun sa pagbenta ng mga comics na yun. And that's why when Kadjo, pitched the idea of, let's do a comic book, parang for me, sabi ko nga, parang back then, of course, syempre ang peg namin, ang inspiration namin was Image Comics. So back in 94, 95, in our heads, we were going to become the next Image Comics. Na parang, ito na, pag-release natin ng first issue, bestseller na to, bibenta na to.
Ganun yung drive, no?
Walang bumili, di ba? Parang, so I mean, it was hard. I mean, I think we printed 1,000 copies of the first issue, and it took us a year to sell it, to even like sell half of it. I don't know. But so when we printed Trese, I just said, let's do it for fun. Let's just do it because for me and Kato, it was a way it was just something different because we were both working for the ad agencies back then. So sabi namin, I mean, for me, that was my thinking. Sabi ko, gawa tayo ng comics na hindi natin kailangan pa-approve sa mga boss natin, hindi natin kailangan pa-approve sa mga kliyente. Para sa atin lang to. So binuo namin yung first issue, tapos binenta namin, and thankfully what happened was we sold out yung 30 copies.
Nice.
That's so cool.
Bihirang-bihira yun yung ma-sold out kahit na ganun ka-konti.
Sa unang Comic-Con, tuwang-tuwa ako, nakabenta akong 50 copies ng first issue.
Wow.
Ang dami ng 50.
So ano na yun? Tumaya na ako doon, 30, baka kailangan mo dagdagan, 50 copies.
Actually, hanggang ngayon, sir, ganun din yung namin number of new copies na dinadala. 30 or 50 copies yung standard
Kasi ang dami mong kompetensya, di ba? So, but there, so yeah, that's how we started it.
Sir Budjette, bago magkaroon ng Comic-Con, saan kayo nakikita-kita as comics fans dati? Alam ko kayo nila Sir Jerry yun di ba?
We would meet up in Robinson's Galleria. So my Platinum Comics was the name of the comic book store where we all met up. And as a bit of a backstory there, so aside from Platinum Comics, there was another comic book store called Cats sa Viramol. Cats was the one that put together the comic book Aster. So that was Oliver Isabedra, Jerry Alangilan, Lenny Liu, was Jay Anacleto part of that? Michael V.
Wow.
He did the comic book for that one.
Si
Bitoy. And they got Jay Lee back then to do an alternate cover.
Grabe naman.
So it was published in the States. It was published by Entity Comics. And to promote it, they invited Jay Lee to come over. So sa Platinum Comics ginawa yung event. There were two tables. So there was a special table for Jay Lee, and there were two other tables where the indie guys could bring their stuff. So ang problema, since ang dami naming indie guys nung time na hindi pa nabubuo alamat nun, sabi nila, sige, you can have the table for 2 hours. So 2 hours palit-palitan kung sino nakaupo sa table na yun. So dahil dun sa event na yun, doon ko nakilala that was my first time to meet Jerry face-to-face. All that time we were conversing through snail mail.
Oh my God.
First time, snail mail, kids. That's a thing. It worked back then. And that was my first time to meet all of the other guys. The guys from Exodus, the guys from Archon, eventually would become Archon. Sila Dino Ignacio had Memento Mori. So that's where we met everyone at that time. And it was soon after that event na umuwi naman si Will Sportasio.
So mas nauna pa yung sir, yung event na yun, mas nauna pa kaysa sa pagdating ni Wills talaga.
Yes. So umuwi si Wills, tapos dahil kilala na nga ni Wills si Jerry, or I think sinimulan na nga ba nila yung wet works by that time. Si Wills naman yung nagtanong na, kamusta na nga ba yung mga sino yung mga gumagawa ng comics dito ngayon sa Manila? So si Wills naman yung nagtawag ng meeting. Tapos ako yung naatasan na na secretary at tawagan yung mga ibang indie creators. So tinatawagan ko pa sila noon gamit ang landline at nag-iiwan ako ng message sa beeper nila.
Oh, beeper.
Ang astig.
So,
Si Sir Budjette yung Nick Fury nun.
Galing.
Parang gano'n na nga. So hindi, si Wills yung Nick Fury. Ako yung secretary ni Nick Fury.
Akala kong po, Sir Budj, yung akala ni Sir Jerry, babae kayo.
Yeah. Well, yun nga, di ba? So there's that, and thanks for reminding me, I need to look for that comic book. I posted it on Facebook some time ago. Yun yung regalo sa akin ni Jerry bago ako lumipad dito. He made a special edition, one issue of Crest Hot Butt Shop, kung paano niya ako nakilala. Tapos dahil nga nagsusulatan lang kami on snail mail, syempre, no photo, whatever, my name ends with a Jette, di ba? So it's like, that's a girl's name. So,
si Sir Jerry.
Ako rin nagulat ako kay Jerry dahil first time ko siya nakilala, tapos nag-usap kami. Alam niyo naman si Jerry, kung in normal conversation, he'd rather talk in Filipino. But all of his letters to me, we conversed in English. So it was like,
May parang disconnect.
But there, so because of, that's my long answer to your question. Because of that meeting in Platinum Comics, that became the place where we would regularly meet. So we'd meet up at the bookstore, then eventually we'd go down to, there was a cafe on another floor, internet cafe. Cyber Cafe was the name of the place. And that became the unofficial headquarters of Alamat back then. And eventually, that's actually where we launched Wasted, and that's where we launched at 72. It became a place to do like mini exhibits for Alamat. So yeah, that was our little tambayan back then.
So kayo pala yung parang mini Comic-Con dati.
I think si Jerry uploaded pictures of that. So we had an event called Panels and Pages, and that happened on February 1995.
Wow.
The person in charge of the promo and marketing of Robinson's Galleria was also a comic book fan, si Melissa. And she was, I think, in connection with Platinum Comics. Kasi nga nakita nila when they did the J. Lee event, it brought in a lot of people. So they thought, let's do another one. So yeah, I guess you could actually say that was the first Comic-Con in the 90s of independent, self-publishers at the time. And it was held at Robinson's Galleria.
Yung mga participants nung Comic-Con na yun, Sir Budjette, within Metro Manila ba? O may mga dumadayo pa from other places?
I think I think karamihan na nagpunta doon, di nga nila alam ba't kami nandun. Parang ano ba ito?
Sino ba ito mga to?
Uy, sikat ba yan?
Yung isang kwento na wala ako sa booth. So hindi ko alam kung totoo to, niloloko lang ako nung guys. Sabi nila, kasi syempre nagde-demo yung mga guys. Tawag dito, yung iba nagse-sketch, yung iba some guys are like doing, on the spot, painting, watercolor. And then may lumapit daw na mama na parang, habang may nagde-drawing sabi, so bata, ikaw ba gumagawa niyan? Opo. Hindi ka pala magpinta. magkano ako magpapinta sa'yo? So, syempre, di namin alam, how much do you charge your commission, right? Tapos, supposedly, sabi daw nung guy, pwede ka pa pumunta sa bahay ko dahil kailangan pintahan yung pader namin.
Ganyan hanggang ngayon.
I don't know. Meron.
Meron pa rin yan.
Ibang pintor yun.
Ibang pintor yun.
But there, so a lot of the people were just walked in. They didn't know. A lot of them were amazed that meron pang gumagawa ng comics, na merong comics na hindi siya Atlas at Gasi, that some of it was, in full color, or at least our artwork was in full color. Tapos syempre, since karamihan yung pinapublish namin doon was black and white, may mga magulang na lumalapit, tapos sinasabi nila, ano yan, coloring book ba yan? Pwede ba yan sa anak ko? Tapos,
yung kahit
yung mga nakikilala namin noon.
Kahit nung sa Comic-Con UP, saka sa bahay ng alumni, may mga ganun pa rin na, uy, ano to, parang coloring book kasi nga line art, tas walang kulay.
Same experiences.
Oo. Pero thankfully, nagbabago naman. Recently, wala na masyadong ganun.
Yes.
Sir Budjette, nung bata ba kayo, mahilig na kayo talaga sa mythology, Pinoy mythology? Tinatakot ba kayo ng mga parents nyo dati? Uy, may mumu, ganun.
Oo naman. Kwento tungkol sa mga multo, kwento tungkol sa mga aswang. Those are the stories I got from my mom and dad. And then, of course, my relatives. It was from my relatives, mga tito, tita. Yung nga maalala ko saan yun. Basta I remember we were walking on some empty lot. And then there was a mound there's an anthill, I think. And then that was my first time to hear, magsabi ka ng tabi-tabi po. And, I asked why and got the full explanation about it. It was the sort of stuff that I grew up with. Kaya, and then in the 80s, for some weird reason, nangyari siya nung election time, during the snap elections. There was a headline of a tabloid that said, manananggal sighted in Manila, or manananggal seen in Quezon City, whatever. Parang, alam mo yun, it was the para siyang siguro totoo dahil nasa dyaryo, di ba?
Right, yeah.
Oh,
so, I think that's everything, growing up in that kind of environment is what eventually fed into writing the stories of Trese, of trying to understand. In the 90s, of course, was also, dun kumalat yung kwento tungkol sa the snake man under the mall, right?
Oo. Actually, taga ako taga Pangasinan, doon ako lumaki. Pero alam ko yung, na yun yung story
yung kwento na yun.
Okay, kwento na yun.
Sir Budjette, regarding Trese's influence, na heavily nga influenced by Philippine mythology, I've heard in one of your interviews before na parang aside from Philippine mythology, antas din parang ma-influence din siya sa mga we call this crime stories. Am I correct?
Yep.
CSI.
Yep.
Pero what captured me, yung sinabi niyo po ay parang you took the technology thing in crime stories and put it into in our context, in our Philippine context, which is magical.
Yep.
And sobrang kaya parang pioneer for me, pioneer yung Trese as I guess putting interest again in the comics industry, in our creators, in coming up with Philippine mythology. Now, in that regard, I'm just curious, for you, how do you think, parang how accurate or accuracy ba ay kailangan or ay paramount in a certain storytelling, or gaano ka, but how do you gaano ka free ang isang creator into manipulating or depicting those symbolisms, those traditions, those culture?
Yeah. No, I'm laughing because we get accused of doing the wrong thing. Every now and again, some guy alala ko sa bahay ng alumni pa yata, may lumapit sa amin. Parang sabi niya, mali yung paggamit niya ng baybayin.
Yeah. How do you take on those?
Ever since then, si Kadjo, wag na natin gamitin yung baybayin.
Oo.
My half joke to people is I'm the laziest researcher ever. A lot of the stuff, I would casually read up on stuff. So growing up, I had, I think Ian talked about this, the Soul Book. The Soul Book by Hilda Cordero Fernando was just one of those things lying around in the house. And since there was no internet, and since there was only 5 channels on TV back then, eventually you get bored and you just have to start reading the book. So for me, the big basis of a lot of the stuff was everything that came out in the Soul Book. And then eventually, of course, I would go to the library and look for other storylines. And I think kung titingnan mo rin yung mga, lalo na yung, it's only recently I started to read the books of, what do you call this? Oh, I'm blanking. Of Maximo Ramos. So Maximo Ramos, of course, is the one who started to compile all of these stories and publish them into books. Even yung mga kwento na nahanap niya are very flimsy in terms of detail. So parang, it's really up to the reader or the writer to fill in those blanks. Diba? So I guess that's the downside of the amount of research that has been done about Philippine folklore. So butas-butas siya from my little research. So I know that there's there's a Facebook page called Spirits of the Archipelago, right? And I think that guy, and I'm sorry, I'm so bad at names. But he's the guy who moderates that has kept in touch with me. And every now and again, he would send me or share with me his Excel file and say, Sir Budjette, I've now cataloged 1,000 creatures from Philippine folklore. Let me do this.
So, dedication.
Mighty convenient.
Tapos ina-update niya yung Excel file na yon every year.
Wow.
And they have started to release zines of these compilations. And what he did and even the format he took was, instead of making it an academic or encyclopedic description of the creature, he writes short stories about them, and then he has the text piece that accompanies it, right? So that's an example of someone who's done a ton of more research than me.
Yeah.
And there's also, and my favorite site is the Aswang Project. So
yes,
the Aswang Project is by Jordan Clark, who is Canadian, who made a documentary called the Aswang Phenomenon. And if you take a look at the research he's done, he's like the one who has made the historical and cultural connections, trying to figure out, baka kaya may tikbalang dahil ito yung nakita, this is what happened during pre-Hispanic times, which led to this storyline, which led to this creature. But still, at the end of each documentary, it's still a big question mark for him. So accuracy and alam mo ba, it's hard to say,
debatable siya.
Are you being accurate with what was told before? So obviously, if you have something that's written or a photo of something, then somebody can argue, mali yung ginawa mo, hindi consistent yung pagka-depict mo sa creature na to o dun sa yung armor or yung vest or stuff like that.
Right.
But I think it's really up to you, the creator, on how much do you want it to be accurate, diba? So you have on that spectrum, take a look at what Stan Lee did with Thor. That is nowhere near accurate. Norse mythology.
Right, yeah.
And on the other side, you've got Victor Magtanggol. So
right, yeah.
Where do you want to place yourself?
Yes. And I think it's nasa intention din ng creator, if he wants to inform the readers, he should be, I guess, more accurate about it or more thorough. Pero kasi parang may naging issue before sa isang comics community na parang most of the creators are like loosely using these symbolisms which are part of the culture. Na parang they are misrepresenting it in some way. So parang what's your take on that? Yung mga creators na they use it loosely, those kinds of symbols, etc.
Yeah, what's the term? You're being accused of cultural appropriation, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, it's how you. I don't know kung yung excuse Pinoy naman din ako, di ba? No, I think that's not. Again, it's how are you using it in the storyline. I think. Yeah, I mean, what do you call this? I'm sorry. So what just popped in my head is, of course, most recently the controversial practice of tuob has gotten into discussions of people, right? Funnily enough, tuob is also is based on belief. It's also a way to get rid of the aswang from that's inside you. So we don't. Is there? So the question is, when you depict that in a storyline, how accurate are you? It's a story that you heard from what do you call this? From your relatives, and so I guess it's partly there is a sense of responsibility in terms of how you depict it, and I guess in the telling of the story, how offensive is it to the people who still practice it, right?
I see.
I think nangyari rin yata yun recently in Frozen 2. In Frozen 2, they were depicting this certain tribe, and they according to Disney, I guess maybe they was also being very cautious about it. They had to get an expert on that tribe, an expert on the language, the clothes. Parang they made sure na it was as close as possible to how that tribe lives, talks, and breathes. So, so it's tricky.
So, parang in a way, you tread lightly, in a sense.
Yeah, I would suppose so. I mean, you do as much research as you can, and then I guess it would be great if you can validate it somehow. Find an expert. I mean, even what do you call this? The very debatable General Luna.
Yes.
It starts off with, this is not a historical,
depiction.
Yeah, exactly. Sa simula ng pelikula, they're saying this is not, this is not a history book, right?
Yeah,
so I think you need to take that with you, especially if it's a work of fiction. It's not a textbook. It's not an academic paper. That's where you get graded for accuracy. So I think a reader needs to bring in and know that there is artistic license in some of these things.
Interesting. Thank you po sa pagsagot.
Mahirap din isulat pag pag hindi mo na research
Yeah. You can't know what you write, what you don't know. You can't write what you don't know. Yeah.
Ang dami ko rin research sa hotdog page, mga hotdog, mga ganyan. Search ko talaga.
Paano pag magkaroon ng...
Francis, wala pa naman na-offend na hotdog sa pag
Kasi yung
nagreklamo.
Yung mga hotdog kasi, Francis, marami yan. May red, may chicken, may cheese.
May chicken.
May taga-ibang bansa pa, mga Frankfurters.
Mga Frankfurt. Sausages yun.
Ingat ka sa mga hotdog.
Sir Budjette, ini-expect nyo ba na ganito kalaki yung attention na nakukuha ng Trese ngayon?
True. Oh.
Nope. I mean, again, it was like, I think I think again after 1995 at hindi bumenta yung comics namin. It was
Oo,
like,
yung inisip nila na image sila, di ba? Di ba? Na-disappoint sila.
so yun, it was a it was a very slow and steady, I think, build up to where we are now, and I think it took. I mean, I can't remember where so one of my favorite podcasts is Word Balloon with John Sanchez, and we had an interview with Brian Bendis, and sabi ni Bendis was, I think ano ba yung time na yun? I think this was before he moved to BC. Basta one of my favorite things na sinabi ni Bendis is you need to keep hustling. You need to keep hustling your work. Sabi niya, and he was telling the story of Bruce Springsteen. You know, when Bruce Springsteen comes out with a new album, he doesn't just sit back and think people are going to buy that album. He needs to promote it to concerts. Yeah. He still needs to continue to hustle. And I think that's something that I've held on to. So I would. Were you part of Pinoy Exchange? Do you kids remember Pinoy Exchange?
Yes, Pinoy Exchange. Parang forum. It's a forum.
So syempre back hindi pa uso yung di ba? Hindi pa uso yung lalagay mo yung totoo mong pangalan. Everyone had like nicknames or handles. Yeah. So syempre magsisimula ako ng topic ng, hey, what's your favorite comic book? So syempre comment yung mga tao doon. Tapos ko-comment ako, hey, have you heard of Trese?
Oh, okay.
Tapos, yung isang tip na nakuha ko kay Bob Ong, and I don't know if Bob Ong's gonna hate me for revealing this. Nung first time na na-distribute yung Trese sa National Bookstore, ang ginagawa ko, hindi ko naman ito ginagawa linggo-linggo, but every time I'm in a National Bookstore, pupunta ako sa customer service counter. At tanungin ko, meron po ba kayong Trese? Wala. Pwede ba kayong umorder ng kopya ng Trese? Sige sir, ano pangalan niyo? Ben Chan. Tapos, mga 1 week later, tatawag yan, Mr. Chan, nandito na po yung Trese niyo. So, kailangan ko bilhin. Kailangan ko ngayon bilhin yung kopya na yun, di ba? But the thing is, that was the explanation. I mean, that was the tip to me, because until now, the bookstore can only order so much of your books, right? Yeah. So they're not going to order 100 copies. They're going to order like 3 copies. And the moment that gets sold out, the branch manager, of course, doesn't know ano nga ba yung bumibenta sa branch nito, or like she's keeping track of like how many Harry Potters are we selling now. So it's been kind of up to you.
Right.
So kind of promote your stuff there. So yeah, I mean, I think my point is that it helps to always remember you need to find ways and means to promote your work, get it into the hands of other people, and then you just gotta hope.
Yeah.
That it sells.
Yeah. Sir Budjette, aside from Trese, are you like working on other titles? Are you collaborating with other artists? Behind the scenes?
Yeah, not right now. The most recent, I guess, were the books we did for some. We did the Lost Journal of Alejandro Pardo and the Black Bestiary. So I guess in parang thematically connected pa rin siya sa Trese kasi tungkol din siya sa mga aswang. But so that was a fun project to work with David Hontiveros, Adjo, Bo Guerrero, and Mervin Malonzo. And it became a really nice excuse to do more research tungkol sa mga, creatures of Philippine myth and folklore.
So it's more of a spin-off po ba siya ng Trese, or completely in the same world lang?
We don't know.
I see.
Maybe I don't know if they're gonna meet yet. I mean, so there. But again, it's like there were also other stories that we did for for Summit, right? So we did Underpass for Summit a couple of years ago. And me and Kadjo, ang contribution namin doon was the Manananggal story. So people would ask me, is this part of the Trese universe? And, unofficially, I guess, yes. I mean, story-wise naman, Trese is always about, the question is, where, in the city now, in a modern-day city, where are all of the old Filipino gods and monsters?
Yeah.
So even when I don't write a Trese storyline, I guess yun yung default setting ko. Yun yung
interesting. Yes. So, parang yun na yung lore or the world that you already established kahit not necessarily affiliated with Alexandra. As long as that insight na saan kaya ngayon ang mga gods and deities natin. Yeah. Reminds me of American Gods ni Neil Gaiman.
That which is where I got it from. That was of course Neil Gaiman said that in the intro to American Gods, right?
Right,
so
yeah.
I just got his question and then I put it into Philippine context.
In our context. Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Sir Budjette, gaano kayo ka-hands-on dun sa adaptation ng Netflix?
Yes.
Sa Trese?
It's
good question.
Yeah, no, there. I think when they, so me and Kadjo got to meet with the team for a day. He got to spend a day with the director, but after that, it's all they're running it independently from me and Kadjo. Every now and again, I would have a chat with Jay Oliva, the director, but it's really just more for us to like talk about some details of it, but essentially storyline, character design, it's they're completely in charge of it. I've Kadjo spent a day with Jay and his art director. They talked about character designs. Whenever I'm back in Manila, I get to meet up with Tanya, our producer. So I've actually read the scripts. I've seen the scripts. So
Ardie, give me.
And obviously I can't talk about it, but I think so. The one thing I do tell people is that I think if you're a long time reader of Trese, that you will enjoy it. Okay. And that you will still be surprised by it.
Thank you for that.
Because I think, di ba parang typically if it's an adaptation, like when I've read a novel or a graphic novel and then I watch the adaptation, parang ina-anticipate ko na parang ito na yung dito mangyayari ito. Tapos bilang mamamatay na si ano dito. So some of them are very faithful to the adaptation. But I think so what they did was, and by the word itself, it's an adaptation. So you need to change it to fit the format, right? So I think there will definitely be very familiar moments and characters, but they've managed to tell and weave the story so that it's surprising to an old-time reader.
Sir, but
pero may napanood na kayong go ahead, Mitzi. Tinatanong ko lang kung may
I've seen the character designs and they're fantastic. They've shown me background art. And when they first showed it to me, sabi ko, what a really great painting of Manila. And they said that's not the painting, that's the actual background of the. So it was that super detailed. So at least that one scene.
Excited. Will it come out early next year or like late next year?
We'll all find. It's all a mystery to me.
Shocks.
We'll find out together. We will find out. Pag in-announce ng Netflix and then alam na natin.
Baka kung wala tong COVID, no?
Going blue.
Sana.
Oo nga. Sir Budjette, speaking of going global, parang may assumption po ako na baka naka-attend na kayo sa mga comic conventions dyan sa Denmark or sa ibang bansa. Sa tingin niyo po ba, gusto ko maging optimistic, pero gaano kalayo ang standards ng comics natin in comparison sa sa internationally? Since you go.
When did I post? Well, the last time I attended one siguro was a year ago in Copenhagen, which is like 3 hours away from where we live. And ang nakakatuwa doon is that it felt like entering Comic-Con. You had your big publishers on one side, the big booths on that side, and then you had the guy with just one table and his photocopied works in front of him, right? And his little standee and his, and yung presyo na nakasulat ng pentel pen, So it's we're the same. We're the same anywhere you go. I mean, most especially the indie creator. Parang kanya-kanya, and then you have that guy with all of the buttons and stickers.
Yeah.
The girlfriend niya who's cosplaying the character that's in his comic book. So yun, it's really fun na parang I know what you're going through.
Bigla mo na lang siyang niyakap, no?
yung walang lumalapit sa kanya, tapos nandun lang siya, tapos tumitingin siya sa lahat ng mga tao. I know how you feel. So I've been there. And then in that particular, was that the same convention? So there's that convention. And again, there was a small table. There was a Japanese man, who looked like a lolo, like glasses, and he looked very prim and proper. He had like stuff on his table. It's like, wow, there's an old man selling his comic books here. So his manga. So lumapit ako, and I was like looking at his stuff. And then I was like trying to figure out what is he selling. And turns out that guy was the creator of Uruksopidoji, the famous manga. Yes, Francis, it was the Uruksopidoji guy.
Nga ka dyan, Francis.
Ako dito, or
okay, si Sir Tupe. Oh, okay.
So they got, but yeah, he was like he did not have the big booth set up. I think he was just happy to be there, be part of the event, and so it was fun. I mean, again, I guess it goes to show that it doesn't matter if you're like newbie or long-time comic book creator. The moment you have events like that, we're all in the same spot. You're all in the same corner. And talent-wise, I think it's relatively the same. I don't want to brag that we're better than them, but I think it's the same level. You could, alam mo yung sinong baguhan based on the art style, tsaka kung paano niya pinipresent yung gawa niya, and alam mo kung sino yung veterano na doon na pang ilang Comic-Con na niya to, alam na niya kung ano bibigbitin niya para to sell it. Diba? So it's fun that way to see. We're like we're all brothers at arms, sisters at arms.
Yeah.
Yung sa mangga na parang sa kanila baliktad, since marami sila mga product. Yung mga mangaka, nagbe-break sila sa mga serial nila para mag-indie.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yun yung rumor na sa Hunter x Hunter. Kung ba't laging hiatus, gumagawa siya ng indies niya. Binibenta niya
talaga?
Oo.
Breather siya.
Parang daw kasi siya sa ayaw niya yung mga editors din mo kasundo. Gumagawa siya ng sarili niyang
anong kawala lang niya?
Yung gawa ng guy na yun, is it as famous as Hunter x Hunter?
Yung indie?
Oo, yung indie niya.
Hindi ko pa na
Misteryo din.
Baka hindi pa sikat kasi hindi pa natin alam
That old guy. Yung old guy.
Diba?
With
Is that right?
with regard to content naman, competitive enough na ba ang content ng comics community here in the Philippines? If parang in the context, kunyari, ipapasok siya sa mga, for example, festivals. For sure, Trese can be a nominee for that. What are your thoughts about it?
I mean, I think when you were talking, or just when you were just mentioning that, I think I would put my bets on, for example, like I would love to see Dead Balagtas, side by.
Yeah.
I can easily see Dead Balagtas get an Eisner if it ever,
Yeah, ang ganda.
enter it in any international competition. I think Dead
Ano ba
Balagtas.
yun?
Yes. Yeah.
Ready si Mitzi. Thank you, Mitzi. We appreciate.
I love her work. Sobrang
Your next title, tingnan natin kung meron ka.
game.
Contest. I mean, I think that's a good example of someone who's done, not I can from the little that I've read, I can say that's unique. That's a unique way of breaking the medium and pushing it to the storytelling technique na ginamit niya for that matter.
Yeah.
Nung nabasa ko yun, parang kailangan natin galingan na talaga.
Yeah,
Sabi ko, ang tagal kong nagko-comics, hindi pa ako nakagawa ng ganito kaganda.
When I first heard about Dead Balagtas, it was through her webcomics. So when they said she was coming out with the book, I thought they were just going to compile all of her webcomics. So that's why that was super surprising for me. When did you have time to do this?
Yeah.
Alien si Dead Balagtas.
Pero with regards to this, yun yung curious na question. Kasi titles like this are really great and they carry a lot of malaki yung social responsibility nila for not only for them as a creator, parang not in a way, sorry, nagbablabber ako, baka yung creating these things ay nagtatranscend na hindi lang sa pleasure na lang. It's looking at it in a macro level na parang social responsibility nga. So parang ano yung take nyo po doon na parang yung mindset ng mga creators ay if they want to make these great comic books, these great graphic novels, would you say that at early on they should consider that kind of themes na yun nga, social responsibility, social change? I'm not talking about like politics per se, but parang parang yun na parang hindi lang siya for pleasure seeking yung paggagawa ng comics. Sorry, did I make sense?
Yeah, I think it boils for since you're asking me, and maybe you can throw that same question to everyone else. Everyone else makes comics here. For me, it's like, ano yung trip mo? Diba?
Right.
I think that's the primary thing you need to fulfill. Trip mo ba gawin to? Trip mo ba ikwento to? Doing stuff for... obviously you need to enjoy it at some level, diba? Pag gumawa ka ng comics, gusto mo bang tumawa yung reader mo, o gusto mong matakot, o gusto mong that's the shallowest thing that can happen. Okay. And eventually, are you telling a story that actually moves the reader? Does it actually bother him at night? Diba? It really depends on ano yung level nung, kasi posible nagbasa ka lang. Take a look at, for goodness sakes, Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah. You can read it on a very shallow level, na parang, ay, nakakatuwa. And then you could read it like, oh my God, what could I have been doing with my life? Level na parang, di ba, napaka-simple comic strip, tas biglang, oo nga, dapat gawin ko to.
Yeah.
Pag ganun ka. So you don't know. You just don't know how it will affect the reader. So it's so hard to say, this is it. Some people, and we do this a lot in advertising, we write, before we make a TV commercial, we actually write a manifesto. And sometimes it feels like it's too serious. Diba? At the end of the day, you're selling coffee. You're selling soap. But you're writing this manifesto as if it's going to change the world. And sometimes it does. Sometimes if you tell, I mean, and I'm gonna go on a tangent. I'm gonna try and come back. But even telling a TV commercial is actually a 30-second story. So, may mga commercial, di ba? Pagkatapos sa panoorin, umiiyak ka naman.
That's true.
Yung mga yung mga Thai
O yung mga Thai commercials, sobrang always hit home.
Bibili na ako ng toyo. Ang galing-galing.
Bibili na ako ng insurance.
Bibili na ako ng insurance.
Sana sa Pro-Life kasi doon ako nagtatrabaho.
Tawag dito. So I mean, so point being is that you can, at the beginning of your wanting to tell a story, there is something that you want to say. And you cannot dictate to your reader ano ba dapat maramdaman niya, diba? So again, going back to the comic strip, posibleng kababawan lang mapulot niya doon, and okay na yon dahil napatawa mo siya sa araw na yon, or sa kwento mo meron siyang na-realize at nakatulong pa rin doon, diba? But it's so hard to say itong kwento na to will change the world, diba?
Right, yeah.
I think it's so hard to start with that. And you need to start with, this is a story I want to tell.
Yes.
Because sasabog ako kung hindi ko makwento tong kwento na to. Diba?
Yeah.
So, start with that. Start with yourself or your collaborator if you're collaborating with someone. Dapat kayong dalawa matuwa dun sa ginagawa nyo. And then eventually, it is your personal work. It's not, again, going back to, diba, we will get, whether it's the guy who wants his wall painted or a client who wants a commercial about his insurance policy, we will get the assignment.
Yeah.
So, but aside from putting that aside, now this is your story. Then you need to tell it in the best way possible. And you set the standard. Diba? You set the standard.
Yeah, you set the standard. Yeah.
Sir Budjette, may question si Sherry from Comic Con. You might be familiar. Hi Budjette, we miss you. Question. Trese was originally planned to have 13 chapters or books, was it?
I've told the story before. I thought we were going to last one issue. And then, nung nakarami na kami ni Kadjo, sabi ni Kadjo, Budge, gawa tayo ng siguro mga issue 5 na kami nun. Gawa tayong 10 para, it's a nice round number. Tapos sabi niya, gawa kaya tayo 13 issues.
Kasi Trese.
Andun tatlo na lang.
So, yun is what happened to, kaya namin sinara yung book 3 with 5. Kasi it was like 4-4 yung first 2 books. And then, sinadya namin maging 5 cases yung third book. So that it's technically 13 cases. And then after the 3 books, of course, now we're in book 7. So yun, si Kadjo yung sabi, Buds, gawin natin yung 13 yung books. So,
para sakto.
Pag lumagpas, edi nga.
Well, then kung lumagpas, then that's something else. I mean, I'd still love to tell, for example, I think the story arc we're telling now is Alexandra's story arc. So when we reach the 13th book, I think we'll put a close to that arc of hers. But I'd still want to do a book about, the 3 years she spent in
Budjette. Yeah.
And then as you've seen in book 7, we've introduced the brothers. So, that's me wanting to get to know the brothers more. And hopefully we can find time and energy to tell the stories of the other brothers. And so one of the things I've started to do was to, as you've seen in the Verdugo storyline, yung Takutan, I worked with an old friend, JB Tapia, and I just told him, tell me a Verdugo story. And that's what he came up with. We collaborated a bit. I edited a bit some of the stuff, but that's that's all JB. And I'm so happy na finally nag-drawing siya. Si JB yung kaibigan na, lalaglagin ko si JB ngayon. Si JB yung kaibigan namin na college pa lang kami. Ang dami na niyang konsepto, ang dami niyang drawing na hindi natatapos.
Ayan.
May kilala kaming ganyan.
Yeah.
Yun lang.
That friend.
Okay, is that friend somewhere nearby now?
Baka nanonood dyan.
Turuan
Okay.
na. Turuan
Baka na.
So I'm just so happy that he finished that. I mean, also and of course before Takutan, he was the one who wrote the Grinning Nino of Barang for Dark Colony Clasificado. For me, that's still one of the best. Of course, I'm biased because I edited it, so that's one of the best Pinoy horror stories that's come out so far. I think. So I mean that's the right now that's the slow plan of like, let's finish the 13 books, let's do stories of the brothers, and let's tell her childhood. One day we'll go back and talk about her childhood.
Naku, makita natin si Anton Trese in action nun kung childhood niya yun.
Oo nga.
Si Anton at si Lolo.
Oo.
Yeah.
Yung Verdugo nakakatakot libre yung link nun. Sobrang
may
badass niya.
May rin sila tita, si Auntie Trese.
Oh my God!
That's a very good question. So if you remember, Trese is supposed to be the sixth child of the sixth child. So that means Anton is the sixth child. So I was wondering the other day, sino yung lima niyang kapatid? And that's what came to mind. Sabi ko, it's very male-centric, the whole Trese family. Sabi ko, if ever we meet the other six siblings of Anton, it will all be women. So we will meet the titas of Trese.
Ang ganda.
Sir Budget, may question ulit si Carlo Jose San Juan ng Carlos Comics. Sabi niya, hi Budget, good to see you. Question, do you find yourself having to be at a certain state of mind to begin writing? And if so, how do you get there? Nagko-concentrate ba kayo ganun? Okay, right na.
Tapos magle-levitate.
Hey Carlo, I wish si Carlo na bisita niya ako nung last year. Was that last year or early this year? And Ian has a question. We'll answer that question later. Let's see if we can come back to Ian's question. I don't know if I really want to answer that.
Tayo lang naman. Tayo lang naman.
Pero hindi tayo naka-live.
27 lang yung nanonood.
Kunwari lang na live stream to. Tawag dito. It's a... And going back to... No, let's go back to Carlos' question. Let's not ask Ian's question. I have that's a good question, and I don't know. I mean, I think my favorite story to tell is writing The Secret Constellation, which was in book 1. And that storyline I wrote in one sitting at a Starbucks in Makati.
Wow.
With ordering like the Grande or Venti Americano. And so sinulat ko siya dire-diretso, and it all started, and spoilers if you haven't read it, it all started with that. The first image that came to mind was actually our Narda analog asking the adult Ding, and that moment was, Ding, ang bato, bigay mo sa akin ang bato. And I already knew that was the moment. Hindi ko alam saan sila nanggaling at di ko alam paano mag-e-end yung libro. Pero alam ko, ito yung moment na gusto kong puntahan. So, hindi ko alam paano ako makakarating dito, but this is the moment, this is the ending that I want for the storyline. And so I wrote that down, and then I stayed there, I don't know, till 1 in the morning or something, and I wrote that straight, and then on a notebook. So I write with a pen and paper, and then the next day at the office after work, then I typed it up. And I thought that's going to be, that was a magical moment. This is how I will write all my Trese stories. And I went back to that same branch, to that same table, and ordered the same cup of coffee.
Maybe same magic.
Wala ako nasulat nung gabi na yun. Parang,
Gonna recreate the magic.
Gonna recreate the magic.
oo, akala ko ganun. Wala. So it kind of helps now that, yeah, so it still kind of starts with what is the crime? What is the crime scene? And then I work my way to that crime scene.
Right.
Or I start from that crime scene and then I start to see what happened, So I make a list of moments, and sometimes the dialogue comes up. The first draft, now the ever lovable line, "Gago, higante can't fit in the banyo." That was the first draft. I don't know why the kambal started to be so konyo and when they started to be like that. But that line just came in, and parang it just stuck there in the rewrite. And I guess they were, because if you think about it, in the first 3 issues of Trese, they did not talk.
Oo nga.
Yeah.
Or they had just like one-liner, thirsty, bossing. Well, alam mo yun.
Typical, guard lang.
Oo.
Mga henchmen.
So yeah, it's see, yes, Ian has brought back the question of
Kasi napag-usapan namin to nung last interview eh. May tinanong namin kung ano yung best drink or ano yung magandang inumin para maging creative. Coffee. Tapos sabi niya, weed.
Spin.
yeah, I think I'm more of a coffee guy. I've tried. I know. 1 or 2 friends that drinks whiskey or rum or something. So I don't know, trying to be Hemingway or something like that. But I've tried writing. I mean, not that I'm drunk on beer, but I would drink beer before writing. So nakakatulog lang ako when I tried to do that. So yeah, coffee is my preferred fuel for writing.
Pero may kayo sir, may plano kayo magsulat ng novel?
I think the closest I've written to prose is right now yung stories from the Diabolical. Maybe it's not in. I'm not thinking about it now, but I guess if the right story comes to mind, then you'll never know. Yes, maybe. Yes, it's a classic line now. Yes, Alan. Hello, Alan.
Thank you sa mga nag-comment at sa mga nag-send ng questions. Sir Budjette, ano yung ma-advise nyo sa mga gustong magsulat ng comics or gumawa ng comics? Yung mga baguhan. Kasi may problema yung mga ibang creators na masyado silang perfectionist. Gusto nila maganda kaagad yung ilabas.
Yeah.
Wala pa silang gaanong experience. Lagi naming sinasabi na dapat gawin lang kaagad. Kahit na hindi maganda, ilabas na.
That it would be the same advice that I would give. Trese, there are 2 drafts of Trese that were written in 2002 and 2003, which I couldn't finish because I was trying to be a perfectionist. I was trying to figure out the best, storyline for it. So it was only in 2005 when Kadjo sent me that text, and sabi nga niya, give me a 20-page storyline and I'll finish it in 20 days. And he said, give it to me by this time. If you give it to me by this time, then I can give it to you by the end of the month. So
Yeah.
so parang one, it gave a format to me. Kasi nung una kong sinusulat yung Trese, again, I was thinking, this is going to be the 200-page epic graphic novel. And it's gonna be like Indie Comics. So,
Yeah.
parang page 5 pa lang ako, di ko na alam kung saan ako.
Yeah.
So when Kadjo said, bigyan mo ko 20 pages. So parang for me, that became, eto na yung kahon. This is the framework you work with. And I need to find a way to cram everything into the 20 pages. And he gave me a deadline. And whether or not it's a publishing deadline, I think okay rin. I mean, it's nice for you to personally have, this is the way I finish the first draft.
Yeah.
And yun nga, exactly what you said, Mel. Your first draft doesn't need to be perfect because no one's going to see it.
Yes.
No one will know you are a crappy writer.
Yeah.
No one will know.
May nabasa nga ako eh. Yung sabi, the first draft just have to exist.
Exactly. And then you get to rewrite it. And I'm sure the experience with you guys is the same. But for me, after I've written the first draft and Kadjo gives me the artwork, then that's the second draft of rewriting the story. And then when we get to lettering it, that's essentially also like a third draft for me to like tweak stuff. So yeah, there will be many moments where the story is not yet in its final stage, and as you will eventually see, when the US edition of Trese comes out, Kadjo has decided to do the director's cut. So all of the stories have now been extended by a couple of pages.
Wow.
OMG.
Tsaka grabe yung update ng artwork. Mas crisp.
That's why that's why Kadjo insisted to redraw it. And I was like I was begging him, please, we don't need to redraw this. We need to submit it by this date. But yeah, I mean, nung nakuha ko yung pages, syempre talagang parang alam mo yun, parang nung tinitingnan ko yung pages, sabi ko, ang galing ng comics na to, sino kaya gumawa nito? Ang galing ng ano. I mean, yeah, I think Kadjo himself has and it's his new, feeling ko talaga he's now found a style that he's comfortable with. Because you could see the shift in the storytelling, diba? From book 1 to 3.
Yeah.
So I think he really, it looks super detailed and but I think for him it's fun to do.
Mm-hmm. Sir, Budjette, gaano kayo ka-detail magsulat? Do you write yung bawat dialogue or parang paragraph lang, si Kadjo na yung bahalang mag-drawing?
Yeah. It's been a mix. More often than not, it's full script. But yeah, I don't think I get into so much detail. So it could as easily be as Trese enters a bar. That's it. I will point out certain details that need to be seen, so that if it's, for example, a clue or a character, then I will make note of it and just say they enter the room and you need to notice the girl in the back, because later on we will reveal she is this character in the end. There have been moments when I would just send him, it's like Trese enters the office of the Bagyon and then it's all dialogue. So I leave it up to Kadjo to frame that. And then I would just say, please make sure you see the map at the back of the room, because that will tell the reader something else later on. So yeah, that's how I would write things. And compared to fantastic writers like David Hontiveros, and if you've seen Russell Molina's script for 66, that is, I mean, I think you could actually publish the script by itself. and that would be a fantastic book. So I mean, he really does, and I think that was their. I don't know if Ian talked about it in your episode, but I think that's what also gave Ian freedom to draw it, to interpret the setting and the scenes that Russell made. And it changed. I mean, from artist to artist, that changes. So I think that's also, especially for people who are collaborating, it's you find out and figure out, ano ba yung okay na style sa inyo. Like in book 7, we were in a bit of a rush to kind of finish that. So even the Jimmy Trese story, for example, I gave that to Kadjo with no dialogue. So it was just beat by beat. So, scene 1, he needs to take the painting, scene 2, and so on and so forth. And the nice thing about that was when I got the pages, I was staring at it, and then I started to try and write it like the typical Trese narrator. And then I thought, I want the reader to know more about Jimmy. And that's when I said, what if I write the captions from a first-person point of view, so that it's Jimmy telling you what's happening to the storyline. Tapos yun, mas naging nakakatuwa si Jimmy as a character na biglang siya na yung nagkukwento. And that happened simply because nga, I needed to get a script to Kadjo so we could start working on it. And it worked out. It worked out in the end. That it just became, at least nagkaroon ng sariling flavor or style si Jimmy versus an Alexandra story.
Ayun. Sir Budjette, last question na lang kasi na tayo. 1 hour na. So what's the ultimate plan for Trese? Ano yung dream nyo for the material? Na magka-live action Hollywood movie ba? Ganyan? Or
Image Comics? No. Balik na naman dun eh. I mean, it's part of what you said. I mean, obviously, who wouldn't want, one's work to be adapted into so many different things and to be shared and appreciated by more people. And I think there were years when we got so close to getting a live action Trese approved. So there were talks of turning it into a movie. There were talks of turning it into a TV show. We got so close. I mean, it felt like the way stories were told to me. It was like, it's now being read by this producer, or this director wants to do it. So parang on those moments, it was like, ito na. It's like, and every time we get the update na parang, it's not pushing through. They're not calling back. They're not responding. Parang you get heartbroken. It's like, di tuloy. And actually, I get that feeling. And I don't know how Kadjo felt about it, but what he would always tell me is that, parang he would shrug and say, we've got the comic book. We don't have control over that producer or that director. Can't convince them, but we can make the next comic book. Yes. So I think for me, that's what I hold on to, or that's what encourages me whenever Kadjo says that. It's whatever happens, whether the series becomes a hit or not. Of course, you wish for the best for it.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you just move on to your next story, and you just make that. That's what you have control over. Writing the next story and drawing the pages. So the big plan is to finish the 13 books.
Yun.
And then let's see what happens next.
So Speaking of that, sir, may tanong dito. Work in progress na ba yung Trese number 8?
Yeah. Kadjo already has the first script.
Oh, ayan na. Oh.
Ayan na.
We've just been, but yeah, the past months we've been putting the finishing touches on the Ablaze edition. So we just submitted it. We're still checking for typos and stuff like that. But yeah, I guess in a couple of weeks we'll start on Trese 8.
Okay.
There you go. 2020, start ng Trese 8.
You just have to do the next story, Ardie.
Yeah.
Choppy.
Ganda nga ng thought na yun. Exactly.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Thank you, Sir Budjette Tan. Congratulations sa lahat ng mga success na nakukuha ng Trese. And thank you for accommodating Indie Comics Podcast. May question ka pa ba, Mitzi, Ardie, Kong?
There you go. There's the seventh child.
Hindi ko
The
kaya
seventh child that no one wants to admit exists.
I'm Trese too. Come on, Tito Anton.
Trese tribute.
That works in a call center.
There you go. The 8th child and the 9th child.
Hashtag Tresiverse.
I love it.
Trese multiverse.
Game. Internet story.
Golden Mitzi.
Wala akong bangs eh. Wait.
Try mo nga, baka maging sada ako.
Yan. Ganda.
Pinakamalapit si Mitzi kasi babae.
The bed.
There.
Ayan.
Yes.
The closest I can get.
Ayan, thank you very much, Sir Budjette.
Thank
And
you.
sana pagbigyan nyo kami ulit next time kapag may bagong balita na sa Trese.
Yes. If there's, I've told you everything now. So yeah, hopefully when I come back, there's something new to talk about.
Yan.
Ayan. So salamat sa mga nanood at nag-comment. Yung episode na to i-upload din sa Indie Comics Podcast YouTube channel. So kung na-miss nyo to, pwede nyo panoorin. Yan. Thank you very much, comics people, and see you on the next video.
Bye, IK peeps.
Bye guys.
Bye.
Thank you.